Lowe's knows when you're looking for reliability, the right brand makes all the difference. And now, Lowe's is the exclusive home improvement retailer for the Whirlpool water treatment line, including their Wi-Fi softener, under-sink filtration system, and more. With Whirlpool's proven performance and our everyday low prices, better tasting, better quality water is within reach. Shop pro-trusted brands like Whirlpool and more, in-store or online. Lowe's, we help, you save.
Don't you think it's about time for a podcast that's more fulfilling? One that's about the vibrant exchange of ideas and perspectives that happens when we actually come together. We got you covered. Welcome to the Deep Blue Project, where the depths of conversation meet the waves of personal experience. This is a real, raw, and unscripted show about everything from leadership lessons to self-awareness, wellness, and the latest current events. We cover it all. We have a rotating cast of guests as we share our personal stories, insights, and opinions on the issues that matter most. Plus, we have a blast while doing it. The Deep Blue Project. It's not just a podcast, it's an experience. And now your host, Chris Workman.
Hey everyone, welcome to this episode of the Deep Blue Project. I am excited to have the second part, I'm going to call it, of After Action, because you guys had the chance to listen to me speak to Arthur 2 episodes ago. And I have his person, I'm going to say, because when he talked to me, he talked about her a lot and the things that come up and the sensory part. And she is considered a sensory specialist, and her name is Bonnie Eckman. Bonnie, welcome to the Deep Blue Project.
Thanks for having me, Chris.
So I'm going to let Bonnie, as I do with everybody else, kind of introduce herself because nobody knows her better than herself. And she can kind of get into, after action, how she got into what she's doing. And then we're going to dig into the meat of this.
Awesome. Thank you. So, as Chris said, my name is Bonnie Eckman. My background has been in occupational therapy. I've been in occupational therapy for about 15 years. Early on in my career and throughout my schooling, I was very interested in mental health and wellness. And that led me to working both in mental health and substance use. And I started noticing early on in my career that people who had first responder or military experience responded to, I want to say, sensory input differently. Their brains worked differently, and a lot of the coping skills that were being taught were backfiring. So I really deep dove into the first responder world and have been specializing in that for the last 7 years. I love it, and I think it's such an important piece that's missed. Even though there's a lot of training, there's not necessarily a lot of training on how to function in the world when your brain typically works faster than most people. So I got into sensory modulation, which I know that's not something people are used to hearing. So sensory modulation is your ability to regulate how you feel at any given time through your sensory system. So we have 8 senses. Everyone knows the 5 because we learned them in kindergarten. Right? Sight, sound, smell, touch, taste. There's 3 more that no one needs to memorize, but just know they're part of that same survival system. So one is vestibular, which is inner ear and movement. One is proprioception, which is how you feel pressure and movement in your joints. And the last one is interoception, which is your ability to gauge hunger, thirst, hot, cold, bathroom, and time. So pretty much anything that's happening internally. And the reason that those 8 senses matter so much is because when you're talking about hypervigilance or fight or flight, logic doesn't always work in those scenarios, right? If it did, your gene pool was probably wiped out generations ago. So it's all about what is being perceived through your sensory system that's going to lead you to understand what's happening in the fight or flight moment.
Gotcha. So I think that's one thing that's fascinating because as one of the things that Bonnie and I were chatting about before we came online was a lot of the things that we deal with. I think when I'm going to say when I was a younger police officer, I've been doing this a little bit long now, but we do talk about it a lot. And that's a lot of people tell us that of separating, trying to separate. And I don't think that's just for first responders. I kind of think that's for anybody, right? To separate your job from your home life, to not bring home, not to bring work home, and not to bring home the work. Like that's virtually impossible. So these are things I think that we also deal with on top of everything else, right, Bon?
Agreed, absolutely. And and kind of like we were talking about before, if you have to separate it to that degree, you don't feel like a whole person, and that's going to lead to a different level of disconnect. And the correct word would be dysregulation, right? Where part of you're not connected to your body, or your mind's not connected to the same moment, and you're kind of going on this autopilot. And that dysregulation is nerve-wracking literally for your nervous system, but it affects all parts of your life. You can't just be dysregulated at work or just dysregulated at home. It's a
Right.
whole piece that's going on with the nervous system. And so often first responders, we talk about mind over matter and how you'd have to think it through. And the science says that's not a real thing that can happen when your nervous system's activated, because it goes back to basic survival and reaction. And first responders are trained in reaction. And then we have the rest of the life, and we're like, how about you think it through and respond? When that is not part of the survival piece, and just telling yourself something isn't going to matter. One of my first encounters, I was working with a vet who had been home for 15 years. And he came into treatment for mental health, and he had come into a group room. And the group room, someone came in a little late and the door slammed. And he jumped up and started mother effering everybody and how rude that is. And right. And people who are not culturally competent, unfortunately, went up to him and told him that it's okay and he's not at war. And it made me cringe. And that's just insane, because he never thought that. Right? It's just a simple reaction to sensory input. There was something loud. He didn't think it was war. He just,
Right.
his nervous system just reacted. And that happens all the time. And then we get a lot of judgment for that, right? Why can't you just calm down? Why can't you relax? And I think understanding your nervous system, but also how the sensory input affects that, gives back more control to the first responder. And let's be honest, first responders want control. And I want to give them that control.
Right. Well, we're used to that, right? That's what we do. We're called when there's chaos. So our job is to control it. But I want to go back to something you said, because some of the things that, and this is why I like doing this, because talking with different people, and you're saying things, and they pop in my head and I just think about them. So, and one of those are, I had this conversation with someone, and it was actually, I was getting ready to give a courtroom witness in a courtroom in a case. And I told him, I said, you guys got all these months to break it down, but when it was happening, it's like I just did it automatically. Like the chaos is going on, and you're not realizing that you're just saying, okay, do this. You're moving without thought.
You
You're
have to.
moving with, you're handling things. And when I say without thought, I don't want people to go out there, oh, you're just throwing it out there. No, it's just years of, I know what I want to do, and my brain knows where I need to be at. So it just kind of happens.
It's a
And
training.
then,
It's an
yeah,
autopilot.
you're moving, and people are like, well, why did you do that? Well, it's just my body and my thoughts are reacting to the situation. I'm telling officers, go do this while I do that. And it's all happening simultaneously. So
Correct.
trying to explain to people, when you're a first responder, when you're somebody who's been doing this for years, and it happens with firefighters, it happens with EMTs, it's not just police and anything. It happens with all of us who have been doing this at any time, that you just automatically react.
And you
And I
have
think
to.
that, yeah, goes back to what you're saying with the big boom. So it's like a reaction.
Yes. Yeah, and the way I explain it to people who don't understand is you're literally using more of your brain and doing it at a faster pace. And when someone doesn't understand, I relate it to, even though it's not the same thing in reality, it is the same thing when we're talking about your nervous system, limbic system, and your survival response. If you're running from a bear, so let's talk about somebody who's not familiar, friends and family of first responders who are not understanding how the brain works or how their nervous system works. If that person's running from a bear, they're just going to do stuff, right? There's not a lot of thought behind it. You're not going to sit there and stop and be like, I wonder if I should climb a tree or hug the bear. You're just going to react. And then afterwards, you're like, wait, why did I do that? And
Right.
and that's where training comes in. The problem with that is that the training is supporting that survival system, and it becomes second nature so much that there's no difference between running from a bear, running into a burning building, running into a gunfight, and running into a chaos situation at home where someone's mad at you. All of those are going to trigger the same activation. And when I say triggered, I don't love that word. I find it offensive.
Okay.
Because trigger sounds like something you can control, right? You pull the trigger or don't pull the trigger.
Right.
And when we're talking about first responders and military, it's more about an activation of your nervous system. It's not necessarily a thought process or something that is relatable, right? You've had reactions to things that you have no context for, possibly. There's not a instant, because of this happened. It's just a constant, I'm going to keep myself in that hypervigilant state is really a lot of what it is.
I think that leads us right into what you do and how you help others understand what's going on. Because if we come into you as we're kind of discussing what we did already, like there's some of us that have been doing this such a long time that just becomes so much of second nature of everything that we deal with, not just work. Now it's work, it's home, it's everything that we deal with. That when we get in that situation where we're in that fight or flight mode, as you're talking about, that we're automatic to react, and it might be in whatever way. So how does the sensory portion of this kind of help us to kind of readjust that, or what does that exactly entail?
Yeah, and I think yeah, absolutely. I think you touched on a really good point of it becomes normal. So a lot of times someone won't even recognize that they're in this hypervigilant state because that's their default state. I kind of talk about it as if you're in DEFCON 4 all the time. And you're used to that. That's just normal. You don't even call it DEFCON 4. The only problem with that, the only time you notice something change is when it's already at DEFCON 5 and now it's an emergency. And so getting people to a point where their nervous system can feel maybe DEFCON 3 even is a great, huge piece, and being able to recognize that little bit of a difference. So sensory is one of the only things that talks to that survival part of your brain. So taking any of the sensory tools, which I will be happy to give you a whole bunch of them, and be able to start to utilizing that ahead of time and maybe noticing. And that's the nice thing is science. It's just concrete. So sometimes when I work with someone, they're like, this isn't working or it's not doing anything. That's actually not possible, but they're just so activated, nerves is so activated, they can't tell that small difference. So that's a lot of it. So when I'm working with first responders, I work in a sensory room. So a sensory room, or what we call a tactical decompression, is very mindful, purposeful sensory input that is going to talk to your nervous system versus just talking to your thoughts. So come in, you change lighting. The difference between blue lighting and red lighting is going to depend on the person, but one of those two is going to feel more comfortable. So I know you know Raoul and Doug.
Right.
So Raoul really loves the blue lighting and the nice stars and the calm space, and that really helps him feel calm. Doug, on the other hand, feels much more calm in red lighting, some heavy metal music, and that's matching his system, so he doesn't have a ton of thoughts. And that's really what we're talking about. Is it's not just about trauma, it's about everyday function and that transition time of what do I do between what I have to do and train to do, and what I want to happen and what I want to do. So if you take away all input for relaxation, right? We're going to talk about relaxation and mindfulness and meditation. That can be really, really difficult for a first responder because the extreme difference between hypervigilance and no input isn't actually great for you. It eventually can be with practice, but typically what happens, and maybe Chris, you tell me, if you sat in a room that was quiet and empty and there was nothing in there, what would eventually happen to your thoughts?
There we go. I mean, that's all I would have. So that's kind of like, I guess it likens when you can't sleep at night,
Yes.
when you have things running through your head and there's nothing distracting it. So that quiet after a while would probably drive me totally bonkers.
And it does, yeah. Your brain wants the same level of input it's used to, and it's used to a lot of chaos. So when you're in those spaces, it's really hard for a first responder to feel relaxed and be able to do those kind of things with the lack of input like it might be for somebody who's in general population.
Mhm.
So the idea behind it is, can we tell your sensory system, i.e. your survival, can we give it enough input that it's not creating its own input? If you're sitting with a blue light and maybe the sound of rain and the smell of, I don't know, wet grass or lavender, and you are using something, Arthur talked about this, but the acupressure ring,
Yeah.
and it has that deep massaging feeling on your hands, it really is reverse engineering. Your survival part of your brain has to look at it and say, can I actually be in a life-threatening situation or this hypervigilant and see blue lighting, have a massage on my fingers, smell lavender, hear rain, and maybe add in some, like we have in the sensory room, a swing and vibration and a
Mhm.
massage, right? And if all of that's happening to your system, your survival brain has to catch up and say, okay, I can have whatever thought I want, but I can't actually be in fight or flight and experience this input at the same time. So it is a lot of reverse engineering.
Gotcha. That's very interesting. That's very interesting. I think a lot of people would look at it and go, "Well, does it work? Does it actually work?" Because we talk about this all the time, and of course, and Doug and Raul and talking to them, like cops are very, very cynical about all this. What's this hokey BS you trying to tell me
Woo
about?
woo, woo woo, and hippie. Absolutely. You wouldn't believe how many times I hear, like, this reminds me of a stripper room.
Well, I can imagine that coming from a couple people, but have you? I mean, you having this, and this is what I think is interesting because I think you making the remarks, and I can see Doug being red and heavy metal
Right.
music because he talks a lot of times about how he's not able to do the quiet thing because that just drives him insane because
Yeah.
it allows all those thoughts to build up, and I can feel that because I do that at times where I need to snap myself out of it, and most of the time, it's snap myself out of it is I just go find something to do,
Yeah.
just whatever it is, whether it's play with the dogs or go outside and run around the pool, whatever, something to just kind of stop that. I'm intrigued because some of the things that you're talking about is kind of something that I have seen with some individuals that they can go do that. And when a lot of people hear about sensory rooms, they're thinking, okay, well, it's a sensory room. I'm just walking in there and it's quiet as hell, and I'm just trying to readjust. So,
Right.
and maybe you touch on how that's different for everyone.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, absolutely. And it is, and that's one of my favorite. Like, give me somebody who's skeptical, because that's my favorite, because they end up being the biggest advocates for it. Because
Right.
once you can feel that difference, then it matters. And so it does happen, and that's okay. The nice thing about sensory modulation and sensory work is you can do it sarcastically, you could do it begrudgingly, it's still gonna have effect on your nervous system.
Right.
So, um, talking about that same, like, how do you get that to work and how it's working for different people, it really is a type of exploration, but a biggest thing is looking at that reverse engineering piece. Is your heart rate racing? What brings that heart rate down? If your head is racing, if you're having negative thoughts or having an activation or what a lot of people will call a trigger. So I'll tell you a little story about a, a first responder EMS who had a really bad call. It was a car accident. Things did not go well. The sound of that call and being there and hearing people trapped in a car got stuck. And because it has a certain pitch, you don't get to pick when you hear that pitch or not. Your brain doesn't care about the relation of what it is. So you could be listening to music and that same pitch might trigger or activate the nervous system. So telling yourself in that moment that things are fine isn't going to be helpful. But if we override that or reverse engineer it and add input, right? Well, that's what we're really talking about, is can we add the input to tell your body to do what it wants? That changes it. So something like Beyonce's Put a Ring on It, probably one of the silliest songs I've ever heard in my life.
Mhm.
But once you start listening to it, what else is in your head?
Right. Right.
Nothing.
That's it.
Yeah, so we kind of overrode that signal. So one of the things working in that situation was every time her nervous system started to activate and she started to feel that heart rate and her mind went back to that same space and she's feeling that feeling that happened on that call, that was the immediate thing. First thing I do is put on one or two of these songs, which is going to override the input, which is going to allow me to get back to a regular space. And your brain learns in real time. So every time you do that, you're teaching your brain that you can come in and out of that activation versus getting stuck.
Gotcha. That's interesting. I know that there's times, and just from my own perspective, I mean, I've been doing this a long time. I started out as a volunteer firefighter when I was 16, and I'm 56 now. So that's somebody reminding me, like, that's 40 years of crap you've been seeing and doing and dealing with, and I'm
Hearing
like,
and smelling.
I don't kind of look at it that way, but okay. But I do. But there is times it's funny because I think about it that I say to people, like, there's things in my head or things that I've seen that I remember as if it was yesterday that I wouldn't put in anybody's head. Like, I would never give that to my worst, the worst enemy or a person that I disliked highly. I wouldn't even take that stuff and give it to them. So one of the things that I find myself doing is once in a while having those kind of pictures come back. And they might not be exact, but they're kind of close to the situation. And that, when you say in a quiet space or you're by yourself, is something that I had found for me was something that happens. Not all the time, but I mean on occasion. And I'm talking it could be something that stuck with me from 20 some years ago. I do find that. So some things that we can give people, like what's some things that help people immediately or they can try or they can start thinking about using, because I know Arthur threw out the high text. I thought that was funny. I said I love them candies. So when he threw it
Absolutely.
out, I thought it was great. But what are some things that we can kind of share with people
Absolutely.
now that might be able to assist them with those things?
Absolutely. Let's talk about just some of the easiest, right? So, your brain can only process so much information at once, and we can override it. So, let's say you're getting into a space where you're having thoughts that you just don't like. It doesn't even have to do with the job, it can just be something that you're going down that road and your head gets kind of obsessive about. In that moment, if you put in a warhead, which is super sour. For that 30 seconds that warhead is in your mouth, you're not going to have any thoughts. That gives you just that 30 seconds to redirect. I joke that it's a loving bitch slap. If you are feeling like you're stuck in a space and you need someone to lovingly bitch slap you out, that would be one way. Hot
Right.
sauce can do the same thing. Cold plunge would do the same thing. Putting ice on your face would do the same thing. Anything that's going to override your sensory system will turn off thought for that time, during that time. And then it trains your brain in real time that every time you get into that activated spot, you come back out versus getting stuck in it. So the anything super sour, anything super spicy. We use black licorice a lot, that because a lot of people hate black licorice.
Can't stand it.
Perfect. So let's say this, every time you got angry, your first thing is as soon as you start feeling that anger, you put in 2 of the good and plenty. By the
Ugh.
time you're done, how are you going to feel?
Like I don't want that damn good and plenty in my mouth. That's what
And
it's
that's
gonna
all.
feel like.
That is exactly what it is, right? You actually get a sense of relief because you got over something. So you
I got
tricked
it.
your nervous system to be like, you matched it. This is, I'm angry, I feel whatever. And then you have something that actually you don't like, that's tangible. I don't like this black licorice. You look forward to it being done. As soon as you're done, your whole nervous system and body goes, that feels better.
Mhm.
Right. So you fixed it on that reverse engineering, but also on a very physical level versus looking at it from just a mental level. Stop thinking about it. You can't fix a thought with a thought. That doesn't really work. But if we use something specific, then we can change that feeling that goes along with it.
Gotcha. One of the things that I wanted to get into was about putting sensory rooms in. What do you? I think he said you guys just had a trip where you guys went to Alaska and put
Yeah.
a sensory room into an agency there. Are you
Yes.
finding that a lot of people are starting to kind of embrace that thought of putting these rooms in, and you're doing them often? And what are they finding that people are getting out of them?
Yeah, and we did, and Alaska was a fun one because how you said beforehand, kind of that sarcastic, "This is so weird, why do we have this in this station?" And that's why they chose to put it in the, not in the department, but in the administration building, right? Because they're like, we don't know how people are going to respond to that. And it took all of 24 hours before they're like, oh, actually, this is lovely. So the response is good. The thing is what's the alternative? The alternative is you sit in this quiet space and try not to think, which isn't going to happen, or you
Mhm.
ignore it and shove it down. If you can take a space and be like, you know what, I am going to purposely, and it's really is a tactical plan. My nervous system's doing this. I'm going to make this small adjustment and I'm going to eat a high chew. I'm going to sit in some low lighting and I'm going to turn on my favorite song and I'm going to smell something that I really like. In fact, I'm going to have everyone, yourself included in the audience that is listening at the moment, I want you to think about for just a second what an old stinky apartment with a lot of cat pee smells like.
Oh,
Okay, perfect. So I want you just to think about that. Remember that smell. Everyone knows that smell. It is terrible. A lot of you right now are having a reaction physically. Your face is scrunched. You just got back from wherever you're listening and your stomach's turning. That didn't even exist right now. That smell
right.
doesn't even exist, but we had a physical response to it. Now if I say, remember what fresh baked cookies smell like, or what it smells like after you rain. What do you naturally do? Yeah, you
Relax.
take an
Yeah.
extra breath, right? You take that
Mhm.
extra breath. And that's really the tactical part is you're planning on how to use all of those senses to help your body. It's really difficult if you're in a space where you're activated and someone says, take a deep breath. Taking a deep breath is fine and great, but if someone tells me that, there's a chance I might throat punch them. However, if they hand me some fresh baked bread, I naturally am going to take that deep breath in and be like, that smells lovely. And now I've
Mhm.
tricked my system into doing what I need to do in order to re regulate. And that's really how that works. And so we love putting them in stations. And like I said, because the science is solid, you can make fun of it. I was like, yeah, go in there and make fun of it. And within 15 minutes, your nervous system starts to relax. And a lot of times, I'll be honest, a lot of people cry. Not because they're sad, not because they're happy, but because it's the first time that their nervous system wasn't hypervigilant. And then it allows for that relaxation that comes out. So crying is pretty typical. Just noticing that something has changed is huge. If I said, how are you feeling right now? Especially police and first responders, how are you feeling? Meh. Fine.
I'm all right.
Okay. Yep. Yep. And you have no idea. But if I can show you and you can feel the difference, now you have a starting point to be like, oh, that's what this feels like. This feels different. And being able to pick and choose when you want that. Let's say uh, you're on a call or you're called out to a scene and you know the scene's going to be super aggravating. Maybe you've been to that same house 27 times and you know exactly what you're in for the 28th time.
Yeah.
Very irritating, and there's nothing you get to do in order to fix the situation, or it wouldn't have been 28 times. The only person suffering in that is the police officer called out to that scene again. In that moment, you take a couple high chews, which are delicious and produce a lot of saliva, and you eat 3 or 4 of them in succession right after each other. What's going to happen to your jaw? It's going to
Kinda
get
loosen up,
tired.
relax. Yeah, you're
Yes.
tired.
And if it's loose and relaxed, it tells that survival part of your system, I guess you're not that irritated because your jaw is relaxed. Because when we're not relaxed and we're irritated, we clench our jaw, right? We're like,
Right.
shut the, and you're clenching your jaw. If we can reverse engineer that, that would be very helpful. So a lot of that is having those tools. And I see it out in the field now. Often I've been doing this for 15 years. It's really fun to teach clinicians. They can teach their first responders. And then I love going out and teaching it to first responders. And the nice thing is they don't have to like it. They can make fun of it and they can
Right.
still use it and it's still going to work. And I think there's a huge a huge benefit in knowing that you get to control how you feel regardless of what's going to happen. So having as many tools as possible just to get your nervous system to relax allows you to have clearer, more authentic thoughts and feelings. Having a transition time, I know that happens a lot with the decompression spaces that we create, is if you can spend 15 minutes after a shift or after a critical incident, letting your nervous system relax and rewriting some of the input and sensory input that's there, you're going to be going home more authentic and more real than if you had just gone straight from one thing to the next. So, and then that starts training people, whether you're in the station, whether you're in your car, whether you're at home. It also gives first responders a different language. So instead of having someone be like, wow, you're a really big dick tonight.
Mhm.
Why are you being such an ass?
Yeah, you came
It would be
home,
like,
yeah.
yeah. What if it was like, hey, you know what? You seem really tense. Why don't you eat 3 high chews and go listen to your favorite song before you come back in the house? Are
Right.
you feeling overstimulated? Because it would be really hard for any first responder to go through a day, even if there wasn't calls, and not be overstimulated by how much they have to consider on a regular basis just in their own head.
Sure. I mean, we talk about that all the time that you're not knowing what you're dealing with day to day. I mean, you can walk into work and it could be a day where absolutely nothing goes on all day, other than you're receiving calls from people trying to sell you shit. Other than
Right.
that, and that has its, I need enough high chews for that once in a while because it just never stops. You touch and as I listen to you talk, it's like all this stuff that comes back of what we do and how we do it just and that's nice because I think one of the things we talk about is having people that actually understand when you're talking about something, what that means. So I'm sure that not just with me, but with our people who are listening to this as we're speaking, when you talk about headed to that call and you're already gritting your teeth because you're dealing with the same guy and the same family or the same girl, whatever it may be, for the 150th time because you worked in the same spot and you just know it's going to be a pain in the ass and you're just all before you even show up, you just ready to you're ready to, bite the tops off of beer cans. Like
Absolutely. Yeah. And your mouth
it's
goes dry and you start getting that agitation before you even get there. And it starts playing out in your head before you get there. And that doesn't feel lovely when that happens on a regular basis, and you're kind of always prepared for either end, right? Like, "Oh, I know
right,
exactly what's gonna happen," or, "What the hell? I have no idea how we're in this situation in the moment or how other humans got themselves into this situation, and it's your job to go help that situation." You want to be able to help yourself in that situation also. You wanna be able
right.
to help yourself feel regulated and feel like you get to control it. So maybe top down even, right? Someone comes down from the top who hasn't been on the field for 15 years and they're like, "Let me tell you how to do your job from now on."
Right.
Right. That can be very irritating also, and that's where having these tools, having something that gives you extra input that helps calm your nervous system is gonna make life easier for you.
So one of the things that we talk about a lot, and I'd like your take on this, is what you're seeing with the generational differences. We talk about a lot now that you know, I guess for a few years, all of us old heads, we'd bitch, oh, these kids don't want to work. They just care about having off. They care about this generational difference, but they are kind of a little more in tuned with their self and their willingness to take care of their own wellness. So what is something I guess that you would think would be good to tell maybe some of us who are dealing with these generational changes how this is helping also them with bringing them into that workspace and getting them to start early because all of us are dealing with shit that we've been dealing with for 40 years and we're trying to figure out how the hell to manage it because we've screwed it up for 40 years and been assholes and means and coming home being a dick, as you said. And we're just really embracing that now and learning it. But we want our people who are coming in to not have to wait 30, 40 years to go, hey, I don't know how to deal with this. Or we're trying to give things to our young people because suicide's a problem. It is a problem with first responders. It is a problem in law enforcement.
Mhm.
And that has no age limit.
Correct.
We're seeing people with only 3 or 4 years on to people who are retired. So, what's some ideas or things that you think would help with that
Yeah, and I think
situation and what we could do?
yeah, and you're right. There is no age limit on that, right? The statistics that have come out over and over again is that 85% of first responders are going to have some sort of mental health crisis at some point, which leaves 15% that are either A, lying, or B, psychopaths, which isn't better. So chances are, like, just prepping ahead of time, knowing that there is going to be some mental health challenges in that and preparing people ahead of time. I do feel like they're more in tune, right? They want things to be equal, the younger generation, and they're more in tune. I think it goes back to the self-regulation piece, though, of not knowing how to get angry and come back. They're just gonna, I don't want to get angry. I don't want to get mad. I don't want to have to do these things. But that's only because they don't know how to do it and come out. And they think that that's going to go like, if I get angry, then I'm going to turn into one of those angry, bitter people. And I think it goes the other way too. People who have been in it forever are like, I don't want to be soft and weird. And
Right.
so it's a matter of being able to change that feeling at any given time so that you have that control. So you can feel confident going in as a young police officer and laying down the law and knowing that you don't have to take that home. You don't have to be that way all the time. This is part of it. You can be authentic and come in and out of those moments.
Right. And you talk as you're talking, you pop things in my head because there's some things that you think about is like, I think one of the failures of us, the thoughts that we have, and I know now that it's just a totally incorrect, thought, is that there's times when you have to be assertive. I mean,
Absolutely.
you have to be the one that has authority in the room in order to control whatever situation that is for the safety of everybody around. Like sometimes you have to be that person, but you don't have to be that person all the time. Unfortunately, for some of us, we got to a point where, we've done things and we've changed our total makeup doing this for so many years that we just end up becoming assertive all the time. I mean, we don't know when to shut it off. And that's, I think, what I had the idea of trying. How do I had to work hard, and I still do. How do I shut that off? How do I make sure that I'm assertive when I need to be, not all the time? And choosing them moments. I mean, that's a
It
tough,
is.
that's a tough balancing act.
It is. And it goes, I'm going to quote one of my favorite quotes by Viktor Frankl, who wrote the book A Man's Search for Meaning. And I'm going to make sure I get it word for word. Now it's good. Now I'm not going to be able to remember it because I just put myself on the spot.
That's okay. I do that all the time.
Okay, so this is actually the quote. It goes like this: between stimulus and response, there's a space. And in that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. And I think that goes a lot with the sensory, right? The stimulus is whatever's happening around you. And the response is where that space in between what's happening and how you want to do. And because of the training a lot of police and fire and all of first responders go through, they're trained in that reaction and not taking that space and not checking in. And that can be a hard thing to do when that's something you're not used to. And that's where sensory comes in. Change the color of the light. Close your eyes. Listen to your favorite song. Smell your favorite smell. One of the things I talk about a lot when it comes to critical incidences, if you're in a critical incident, and I know there are some smells that stick with you forever. There's certain fires, there's certain decomposing people that have this certain smell.
Mhm.
In that moment, knowing that that's going to affect you because it will, because it logs in your memory. If you, after that critical incident, immediately go and shave your nose hairs, wash out your nose, and put on a chapstick that you like underneath your nose, you're going to change that input and that stimulus immediately, which will change that response. so that you're not holding on to that. I worked with a police officer not too long ago who his main coping skill was shooting, which is great. He happened to get called out and there was a bomb that exploded. And by the time I met him, he had not been shooting in 6 months and he was having that mental health crisis because he had no coping. And when we were talking about it, that was his big thing. He's like, I can't be around any shooting range because the second I smell black powder, my everything goes back to that moment, but just not that. I just can't relax after that. So having something as simplistic as just knowing to wash your nose out, shave your nose hairs, and put in a different smell ahead of
Mhm.
time can really help change the outcome of how you're going to respond to those crises.
Wow, it's interesting. Never really thought of that, and I've been in a lot of rooms like that. So, uh, I know we could talk about this all day long, and I definitely would love to have you on, Bonnie, again. But I wanted you to get into um, about After Action. So Bonnie is part of After Action, and that's afteraction.care. And I'm gonna let her talk a little bit about it, but the things that we're talking about today is there is a whole section in on their website about sensory modulation therapy for first responders. It's got tons of information. It's got videos. It's got things that a lot of the things that we're talking about and Bonnie's talking about now are explained on this page. Um, I didn't even get through it. I've started reading it a little bit here and there when Arthur had mentioned Bonnie, and I started looking it up and reading some of. There's a lot there, but it is some amazing, interesting things that I think can help a lot of people. So, if you could just elaborate, Bonnie, before we go on kind of After Action and what you guys do and how you kind of incorporate this into helping our first responders.
Yeah, absolutely. I love After Action. Like I said, I've been working with first responders for 7 years, and I met Arthur 2 years ago when he started building this, and something that I really liked and was drawn to is instead of having a first responder program and figuring it out, he really ahead of time went and found all of the best people who were doing all of the best work and then brought them into one space. So I was born and raised in Utah and had been working out there with first responders. And when he decided to create the first responder only mental health and substance use program, he recruited me from Utah to LA. And so I've been out here for 2 years, and we work with not just our after action facilities, but also all of the any department that we can to help people learn how to do self-regulation and have those tools. So we've built sensory rooms. We like to call them tactical decompression rooms because that sounds less foofy, but it also is very accurate.
Mhm.
And I meet with our clients at least once a week and I teach groups every week. And really it's about coming in and them feeling what works for them. So they have access to the decompression space all the time after sessions also. So a lot of our clients will come in and use it for when they're making phone calls to their family because that way they're already in a good space. And it really is creating and developing those tools in that toolbox of what helps. Maybe the weighted blanket can be really good for people who are having anxiety or
Mhm.
restless leg, having things that help in that moment and learning that here and then being able to transfer it is a big part. So Arthur already created this program and brought people in that were already doing that work, and that's also Doug and Raul. And being able to advocate for culturally competent people to help with first responders versus just having anybody like it therapy is not accurate when it comes to first responders. So
Right.
having that set up ahead of time. So we have 2 buildings, one for female first responders and one for male first responders. I think that's a big thing, being able to have that space where it's a female ran facility for female first responders. And then the male facility has up to 12 clients, and being able to work together in that with all first responders, I think there's a lot of benefit to that.
That's awesome. So everybody, I want to thank Bonnie. Thank you for coming on. That's a lot of information, but it's great information. I mean, um, I do plan on kind of looking into this further, as I told Bonnie and Arthur. As I said, for all you guys out there, you guys know one of the biggest things that we do and I do is I go with people I trust and treat people I believe in. And Chris Scallon, along with Raul and Doug, these are guys that I really, really do trust with everything in my whole being. So that's why I am really, really in tune with After Action and what Arthur and now what Bonnie has talked about here with the sensory rooms, because it really works, and they're helping first responders, and they're genuine in what they're doing and what they're talking about. So please check out their website and go check out the stuff on centrally modulation in these decompression rooms. There's videos of decompression rooms they put in tons of places, and in Tucson and Washington and Eugene, Oregon, a lot of places. You can see what they look like and see what they're doing. I think it's just I think it's a new wave and a fantastic thing. I know that some departments are putting in, and allowing their officers to take sleep or work out while they're working, like things like that. Whatever you're doing, please, as long as you're doing something and helping, the people in your agencies and the first responders and giving them something, please give them something, and look into making that a benefit for all of your people, because it's got to start somewhere. And we need the people, and our mission is I don't need you waiting until you're 56 years old and being a first responder and doing this job and getting yourself beat up. That's why we do this, because we want you to learn from our mistakes and learn from the things that we were never taught when we came into this business. We were taught we had to be tough. We were taught we had to suck it up and move on, but we really didn't have to do that. They should have given us things, but now we know. So my dad used to always tell me something, and it stuck with me forever, and I'm sure it's not something that wasn't said before, is, once you find out there's a problem, you have a duty to fix it. If you didn't know about it beforehand, but now you know, well, then you have a duty to do something about it once you figure it out. So I hope that this works out. Bonnie, thank you very, very much again for joining me. I appreciate it. Is there anything else you'd like to leave us with before we go?
Yes, thank you for having me, Chris. Thank you for doing your podcast and all of your work and having Arthur and I on. Definitely, I know I gave a lot of information, and that's a lot of bits and pieces. This is years and years of study broke down into a 40-minute session. So if you can go check out afteraction.care and look at their sensory modulation, feel free to reach out. Arthur's number is also on there. And feel free to reach out if that's something that you are interested in, you want more information in, or if we can help any of your members with any kind of treatment. Ideally, our goal is to get it so that people don't need as much treatment, because we're helping them along the way. And if they need more than the help along the way, that's what we're here for. So go check out the website, check out what sensory modulation is. Feel free to reach out to any of us if there's anything we can do, or if you'd just like more information of how to implement some of the more simplistic techniques into your department.
All righty. I think for now we're going to say goodbye, but I'm definitely going to work with Bonnie about having her on a little bit longer, because we know your attention spans are past that 45 minutes. You're about to go, well, these people shut up. So you guys take care. You guys stay safe. Please go check them out. I will put some links up for you when we put this out. And as I said, go to afteraction.care. If you don't have anywhere else to turn, if you don't know what you're doing, if today you're just looking for someone to help you, if you're just looking for someone to listen to you, please go to afteraction.care. Will help you. They will help you right now. So you guys be safe, take care, and thank you very much.
You've been listening to the Deep Blue Project. As a father, husband, friend, and someone who loves to chat about anything and everything, Chris brings over 3 decades of public service experience to the table. With a background in firefighting and law enforcement, along with degrees in criminal justice and behavioral science, he's seen it all, and he's learned a thing or two along the way. We hope you enjoyed the show. If you did, make sure to like, rate, and review. We'll be back soon. But in the meantime, find us on LinkedIn and X at Deep Blue Project. find our website at deepblueproject.com, and to reach out, send an email to deepblueproject@outlook.com. Keep keeping it real, and we'll see you next time on the Deep Blue Project.